We all have negative, unhelpful thoughts, right? And a survey has actually shown that up to 70% of our thoughts are negative. And if you're prone to overthinking, anxiety, or feeling quite stressed, anything like me, then that figure might actually be higher. Now, we know that our thoughts affect our feelings and that affects our behavior and vice versa. So, these three, our thoughts, feelings, and behavior, are in a constant cycle of interplay. So often when we have unhelpful or negative thoughts, that then impacts how we feel. And then they kind of maintain this pattern or state of feeling quite low. I know firsthand that it can be so difficult to let go of negative and unhelpful thoughts, even once we're able to identify that, okay, this thought doesn't necessarily serve me, but I'm still really struggling to let it go. And the reason for that is mostly adaptive, evolutionary, really. Our brains have had to learn to register and perceive threats to our safety, whether that's our physical safety or emotional safety, so that they can then take action and keep us safe. So that's great, of course. But once that threat or perceived threat has passed, we need to be able to move back into a state of feeling calm, back into a regulated and balanced state. And it's often difficult to do that if we continually have these automatic, negative, recurrent thoughts. Negative thoughts can often arise quite automatically, without even realizing that it's happening. For example, if you make a mistake, a big mistake at work or wherever, you might suddenly just automatically think, oh shit, it's all my fault, or I always make mistakes, or I can't get anything right, or I'm not good enough, or I'm such a failure. And these are quite automatic, and once they start to pop up, they can often lead to a state of spiraling into more and other negative thoughts. Can you rewrite your thoughts? Can you reframe them? Can you try and replace a negative or unhelpful thought that you have with a more positive one, with one that's more realistic? So often, when we have these unhelpful negative thoughts, they're not actually very realistic. So, for example, if you're thinking of a situation and worried about things going wrong or catastrophizing, thinking of all the things that could go wrong at the same time, often that's quite unlikely. So, taking a moment to actually ask yourself, well, is this thought likely? What evidence is there to actually support this thought? And how can I reframe it or rewrite it in a more positive way? This actually relates to a practice in yoga called Pratipakshka Bhavana, which is essentially when an unhelpful or negative thought comes up, can you cultivate the opposite? Can you adopt the opposite, more positive attitude or thought? And when we think of reframing or rewriting our thoughts or this practice, from a neurobiological point of view, we're starting to rewire these pathways and associations in the brain, which would otherwise maintain a negative cycle of unhelpful thought, unhelpful feeling, and unhelpful behavior. So we start creating new associations for the brain to utilize. I really hope that these are useful tips. Have a go and just remember that there is no magic or instant fix. It all requires time and it requires practice, and try to always show yourself a bit more grace and compassion. Thanks so much for tuning in.